take a look. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, this will all be changed when I'm back in mid-June. I'm up here busy clearing out stuff to make the reorg happen like magic in the 4 weeks that I'm gone. But say goodbye, studio. It'll all be different in 4 weeks. I don't know what you did this morning. I graded tests for 3.5 hours. Then I stretched, and then I sat down and listened to 2 hours and 20 minutes of oral argument in the case involving nationwide injunctions and birthright citizenship. And the key part, I'm going to post the whole argument, which is 2 hours and 17 minutes long, on my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt, YouTube. After it was all done, so John Sauer is the attorney, is the Solicitor General. General Sauer leads off, very persuasive, silly questions from Justice Sotomayor. She's really, really boring. Justice Jackson Brown is just not into, I just don't think she was a scholar. Justice Kagan knew the problem. She tried to frame the problem. Chief Justice came in and said, we can always do things in a hurry if we have to, don't we? When I said, okay, that's the tell. They're going to bring the hammer down on nationwide injunctions. But throughout, the three lefties kept throwing darts at birthright citizenship arguments that it doesn't exist for other than the children of the newly emancipated slaves. And I believe, by the way, that position's going to prevail, but this was supposed to be about nationwide injunctions, and they kept trying to get to the merits. And in the rebuttal, the Solicitor General had had enough, and he stood up. Cut number 2. This is John Sauer, Solicitor General of the United States, the 10th Justice. He's a little bit steamed, I think, in his rebuttal. Cut number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. The original meaning of this citizenship clause extended citizenship to the children of former slaves, not to people who are unlawfully or temporarily present in the United States. The merits arguments we are presenting to the lower courts are compelling. We cite, for example, a host of 19th century authorities that point out that domicile was the touchstone of non-citizens being treated as, having their offspring treated as citizens in that context. That is consistent with Wong Kim Ark as well as with the slaughterhouse cases in Elk against Wilkins, and the suggestion that our position on the merits is weak is profoundly mistaken. And that kind of snap judgment on the merits that was presented in the lower courts is exactly the problem with the issue of racing to issue these nationwide injunctions. The Chief Justice correctly pointed out that this court, if it wishes to address the merits expeditiously, has many tools to do so. Cert before judgment is one possible tool. There are also others. But this court should also address the scope of remedy, the remedial question that's presented in the application. That is an extremely urgent question. And one of the reasons it's an extremely urgent question is the limiting principles that my friends on the other side have been offering have all proven to be completely ineffective to slowing the essentially flood or cascade of universal injunctions that we see in these cases. The states here have a unique issue that hasn't come up yet, but for the reasons we state in our application, they lack third-party standing very clearly under cases like Murphy and Hayland and Katzenbach and Kowalski. So no injunctive relief should run to the states in this particular case anyway. And most fundamentally, the vision of the district courts that's reflected in the issuance of these nationwide injunctions is a vision of them as a roving commission to correct every legal wrong that they can consider and to exercise general legal oversight over the executive branch, which is what this court rejected in TransUnion. And for those reasons, we ask the court to grant the applications.
All right. Now, I love that because I had gone through 2 hours and 20 minutes. Normally, Supreme Court arguments are crack cocaine for me, and I'll listen to them endlessly. Someone as skilled as Sauer or Paul Clement or Justice Kagan back when she was Solicitor General Kagan. I'm enamored of superb argument. But today's was not. John Sauer was interrupted so often that at one point the Chief Justice said to Sotomayor, mind if I can hear his answer? Because she was just arguing the merits. That's all she was doing, was arguing the merits. I think really doing it for the cameras that were not there, but the audio that was. And it was very frustrating when we had the people arguing in favor of nationwide injunctions. They argued for the merits and not in favor. No one can support nationwide injunctions. They can either go get class action status or they can wait for the circuits. There was one interesting line of questions about if the Second Circuit rules that the executive order is unconstitutional. Will you apply it throughout the Second Circuit? And Solicitor General Sauer was reluctant to say, in all times, in all places, we will do that, because he's reserving the right for the extraordinary case. But the answer is yes, in most cases we'll do that. And I just was frustrated. They never got around to the damage being done by these nationwide injunctions to the credibility of the courts. That's really what's at issue here, is that there have been 40 nationwide injunctions issued in 120 days of the Trump administration. 40. They didn't start until 1963. Justice Thomas returned to that twice in his first question and in his first question for respondents. And he said, when did we get started with this stuff? And both times, 1963. Time to bring it to an end. You get jurisdiction over the parties before your court. If someone is similarly situated within your district, they'll get the benefit of it. They'll walk back in. It'll be the law of the district. If you get a circuit ruling, it'll be the law of the circuit, and it will get up to the Supreme Court eventually. And if it's an emergency, as the Chief Justice said, you can get there. I may be able to get back to the entire 2 hours and 20 minutes. I'm going to post it at YouTube at Hugh Hewitt if you want to listen to it. You weren't listening to it live because you actually had a job, and that's my job. By all means, do that. Also want to play for you last night. President Trump's trip is triumphantly continuing through the UAE this morning. But I got asked by Brett last night, who's anchoring from Doha. Brett Baer is made of, I don't know, he's bionic because I don't think he sleeps. But he asked me the one part. It's like he saved up the one question for me that I don't like about this trip. Cut number 3.
Yeah, Hugh, another big deal also happened this morning in Saudi Arabia before they came here to Qatar, and that is this meeting with the Syrian president. Caroline Levitt put out a post about it and a picture summarizing that meeting, saying that President Trump wants President al-Shara, to sign on to the Abraham Accords with Israel, tell all foreign terrorists to leave Syria, deport Palestinian terrorists, help the United States prevent a resurgence of ISIS, and assume responsibility for ISIS detention centers in northeast Syria. He said that the Syrian president is on board, wants to get into the fold, and it's being applauded by other leaders in this region.
Well, Brett, I'm a little skeptical of that. In fact, I'm a lot skeptical of that. The ruler of Damascus, we won't say Syria because the Kurds control the western part of the country, and Israel has established a security zone for the Druze just adjacent to the Golan Heights. So he's got his own part. He's really a proxy for Turkey. I suppose we can put the sanctions back on if he doesn't deliver, but I'd rather he had delivered before the sanctions came off. I will say, though, that's the only thing I've seen go wrong on this trip, or at least give me any kind of heartburn on this trip. Last night at the Gulf Cooperation Council, the president, and they were all there around the table, said Iran can't have a nuke, and they've got to stop supporting terrorism. Palestinians have to stop raping, murdering, and killing people if they want peace. And he said the hostages must be released before we get to peace, meaning that implies a 3-step process, hostages first. That wasn't covered much either, like the speech, but that was a very important moment last night. And I think the high point of the trip for me was the tough talk directly to our Sunni allies. And it was the high point for me. Now, I note in the Times of Israel this afternoon, Israel said holding talks with Syria on al-Shara's regime joining the Abraham Accords. And I said, well, maybe they will. Maybe they will. And if they do, I will not have anything to complain about. I think it's an A-plus trip anyway. The deal making that's going on, the extraordinary. They used to call these goodwill tours. Now they're good business tours. And Trump's doing a lot of business that's good for America, good for the region. He also did a stop by the air base in Qatar and said this to our troops assembled, cut number 6.
Raisin. I said, wait a minute. Raisin, you mean like Raisin Cane? Yes, sir, that's what they call me. General, I love you. You're the guy I'm looking for, General. You're the guy I'm looking for. So is Raisin Cane. It's Daniel Kane, but Raisin Cane, that's what they call him. Then I met another general. I met a colonel. I met a sergeant. They said, sir, would you like to rest? I said, what do you mean rest? I've been resting on the plane. I don't want to rest. What do I have to rest for? He was thinking about Biden to come, okay? Biden. Biden would have rested the entire trip. He wouldn't. First of all, he wouldn't have made the trip. But if he landed, he would have been rested for about 5 days before he had the first meeting. I said, no, let's go have the meeting because I want to find out what's going on over here. We're spending a lot of.
He is a force of nature, got energy, better than any president I've seen, moving through it. W used to move at this pace, too. But after Joe Biden, boy, could the contrast not be starker. Representative August Pfluger is from Texas, the 11th Congressional District in Texas. He joins me now. Hello, Congressman. How are you?
Hugh, I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining me. I want to know what your bird's eye view of reconciliation is. I'm not sure which committees you have that may or may not have a bite of this apple, but boy, Ways and Means was there all night long.
Well, we've got Ways and Means beat. I'm on Energy and Commerce. We did 26 and a half hours straight. It was, I mean, look, let me just get to 30,000 feet as a Republican Study Committee chairman, 189 members of this organization. We're trying to unleash American energy. We're going to spend money to make sure that we secure the border, that our DHS and Border Patrol officials have the right technology and the right manpower and the right resources to defend our country from the invasion we saw for the last 4 years. When it comes to taxes, we want to extend Trump's tax cuts. We have to preserve Medicaid for who it was designed for. That is pregnant women, children, those that are disabled and really need medical care instead of able-bodied adults who need to go get into the workforce and, quite frankly, get a better plan for themselves. So my bird's eye view is that we have put together a good bill. And now comes the hard work of making sure that we can knit it together and next week pass it and send it to the Senate and get this thing signed into law with speed, with aggressiveness, so that the American public knows that we are delivering on the promises that President Trump made and that he was elected to do. So I feel bullish about it, but there's a lot of hard work that's going to go into it this weekend and in the early part of next week.
Now, Representative Pfluger, I love the RSC, the study group. I addressed him when Jim Banks was the chair, and we had good fun. But I'm really more interested in energy and commerce at this particular moment. What in the world kept you there 26 hours?
Well, I'll tell you what kept us there is Democrats who are lying about the provisions, specifically the healthcare provisions. When they say we're going to cut benefits from children, that's false. When they say that benefits for disabled vets will be cut, that's false. The truth of it is that they offered dozens upon dozens of amendments that weren't going anywhere because they weren't realistic. And we need a conservative fix to this program. We want to deliver healthcare to people that need it. And quite frankly, I'd like to see it go a little further. When you consider that the federal government is spending 90% to the states 10% on an expanded population that includes able-bodied adults, we can go further and we can disincentivize reckless spending by states who are taking advantage of the federal government. So this conversation went round and round, and you saw just, some of the worst made arguments that really were based in fiction. But we did sit there all 26 straight hours. We pushed back, we set the record straight, and we ended up passing a really good bill.
Congressman, I tell my audience again and again, in my time in California for 17 years in Orange County, I sat on the Children's and Families Commission. We gave around, small change from your perspective, $40 million a year for children's health care. And Medicaid is lousy insurance. That's the problem. That you can cover more people with lousy insurance, but it doesn't make doctors take it. The whole program is broken. Is anyone ever going to take on the program and actually deliver care to the needy and to the halt, the blind, and the lame? Because it ain't working.
Yeah, Hugh, you're right. And when you consider what Biden did to then expand it beyond able-bodied adults to deliver health care to illegal immigrants, which 1.4 million illegal immigrants are receiving Medicaid that we know about. And not to mention the fraudulently signed up, those who sign up in multiple states. Yeah, we are tackling it. And this bill doesn't fix everything, but it is a dadgum good start. And I'm proud of the work that's been done. I mean, just consider work requirements for those who are actually receiving benefits who was not designed for. You just mentioned disabled children. That's who I want to see benefits go to. The Democrats told stories of disabled children. They accused Republicans of trying to kick them off. Absolutely false. That is not true. We're preserving the program for those kids, and I have a huge heart for them. They're the ones that need the program, not an illegal immigrant who came here from El Salvador, who's 40 years old, and thinks that the American government is responsible for his health care.
Yeah, I could tell you stories about pediatric dentists, not one of whom in Orange County who is not employed by the government, willing to see a Medicaid dental patient because the reimbursement rate is so low. So that's not really insurance. That's pretend insurance for which you pay, and it goes into somebody's pocket, but not a dentist, and the dental care doesn't arrive. So what happens next? You got these big bills come out of Ways and Means, Energy, and I don't know what the third one is. What's the third one? Agriculture.
Well, I mean, agriculture, you also had natural resources and Homeland and the Education Committee. So every committee virtually had a piece of this. And now we've got to knit it together through the Budget Committee. So the Budget Committee is going to start their work. In fact, they already have. They will put this thing together. There's still some things that need to probably get a little bit reshaped and tweaked. And I met with the speaker earlier with a group of folks, and just kind of figuring out still some of the last 10% of this bill. And it'll go to Rules Committee after the Budget Committee passes the knitting together of the bill as one concise bill that all the committees added to. And then, if we stay on track, which I have no reason to believe that we're not going to, sometime midweek next week or towards the end of next week, we will vote on this. And this will be the most consequential vote that many have taken in the House of Representatives, because this is a legacy bill that for decades to come will chart the path of our country, that will right the wrongs of the Biden administration, and will right the wrongs, quite frankly, of the Obama administration, to put us back on a path for prosperity, success, and security.
What's interesting to me, it's regular order. There's a printed bill. Everyone's working through markups. It's the way it's supposed to happen. Are you impressed by that?
Absolutely. It is regular order. And not only that, but when we send it to the Senate and they start looking at it, now we can get back to the business of regular order on our appropriations bills to get us into that position where what President Trump has looked at for fraud, waste, and abuse inside the agencies, now we can start to look at those as rescissions, and we can craft a budget that helps our military yet gains the efficiencies that they've already identified. So we are back to regular order. As RSC chairman, I'm 100% committed to making sure that we maintain that regular order and that we regain the trust of the American public.
Now, last question. Your Air Force Reserve, I don't know if you're retired or not. Are you still Colonel Pfluger, or are you retired?
I'm a colonel in the Air Force Reserve, still.
Okay, so don't be putting your thumb on the scale. The money needs to go to the Navy, Colonel. I just wanted to put that in there.
Well, I love that conversation. Doesn't the Navy have enough ships? Don't we need some more airplanes?
Okay. I hope you get them both. Thank you, Congressman August Pfluger from Texas. He is on Energy and Commerce, chairman of the Republican Study Committee, friend of the program. Good to see him. Joined by John Ashbrook, one of the fellows of the Ruthless Podcast Program. Hello, John. How are you?
Hello, Hugh. I'm doing quite well. Nice to see you today.
I listened to your new episode today, and I got to say, your journo buddies, and they are legion. They can't be too happy with you. You drag them. You put them behind the car, and you just drag them everywhere.
I don't think their audience is too happy with them after the way they covered up Joe Biden's slide into dementia last year. And the more you go back and look at the coverage from last summer and last spring, I mean, the more you're just like, man, they really went that far to try to cover up everything that we all saw with our own eyes. And so I think this is some well-deserved roasting.
It's a very amusing episode. I recommend it to everyone. But I wish you would introduce Nicole Wallace every time you do. Nicole Wallace, who personally hand-selected Sarah Palin for the 2008 presidential campaign ticket and accompanied her on the plane, just so we set the record straight. John, I want to ask you about the Biden family, something that you're often on your program, Mary Catherine Ham, brought to my attention. Do you think the Biden family needs the money? Do you think that's why they're trying to rehab him on The View and that terrible speech that he gave and books that he's not writing? Do you think they need the bucks?
Well, I don't know how they could need more money. I mean, it sure seemed like they made an awful lot when he was vice president and then president. But I mean, maybe just a lot of money isn't enough for some people. I really do think there's something to the fact that there's a Biden Inc. that undergirded his entire administration that didn't get reported on as much as it probably should have. But I think that's a big motivating factor for why they're putting him out there right now. Like, you've talked extensively about that View appearance he did with Joe Biden. It was disastrous for the guy's reputation. And it just sort of like reminded everybody how bad a shape he's actually in. I mean, he was president of the United States this calendar year.
I think I'm reluctant to tell you guys, since you're the big bang of conservative new media, I'm reluctant to give you advice, but I think you all ought to adopt the persona of Joe Biden for one episode and shout at each other at full volume for the entire hour. Just shout over each other and talk faster. But here's my question. This is a political question. I believe if you dug deep, if you called in Jim Biden and Dr. Jill Biden and Hunter Biden and the grandkids, and you asked them about the Foreign Agents Registration Act and the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and where was the money coming from, they're all pardoned, but you can perjure yourself, right? False Statements Act. Would you pursue that as a political matter, or would you have James Comer pursue it in oversight, or would you just let it go because everybody knows?
Well, everybody does know, but I do think there are facets to the way that Biden Inc. operated that would be interesting for Congress to investigate and discover so that they can make rules to prevent something like that from happening again. I mean, maybe it's as simple as getting to the bottom of the money that changed hands for Hunter's paintings or something like that. Just little details of ways that the Biden family got around the rules would be great to know so that they can change the rules and prevent it from happening.
Have you had any high-end discussions on how to prevent a 25th Amendment fail? That was a fail. We were without a president effectively for at least a half a year, probably two, and no one said anything. How do we prevent that from happening?
Right. I mean, all of these things that were huge problems last year, and quite frankly, throughout his entire presidency. I mean, the cover-up of Biden's aging and everything that the staff did, it's a gigantic scandal. And of course, the mainstream media was complicit in that. So they're doing their best to try to cover their tracks for what they did. They're not doing their best to try to prevent something like that from happening again. You can't prevent something like that from happening without going back and first acknowledging that it was a problem and acknowledging the magnitude of what took place to try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. Of course, everyone could see as plain as the nose on their face that Joe Biden was falling apart. But what Democrats did, it hurt their party, it hurt their brand, the journalists, it hurt their brand, but it also really hurt our country. It turned us into a laughingstock and weakened us to a point where not only were our foreign adversaries taking advantage of us in ways that we may not yet know, but there were people inside the Biden administration who were taking advantage of essentially an invalid to get things done.
Yeah, I would love to see campouts outside of Steve Richetti's house, Mike Donilon's house. I think Ron Klain got out because he saw what was happening. I'd leave Ron Klain alone. Has anyone done that? Your journo buddies doing any real journalism?
Not that I've seen, Hugh. The only journo buddy of mine who does real journalism is Hugh Hewitt. And I got to be honest with you, that's why everybody should listen to your show every day.
John Ashcroft, we love you. Thank you. You got to go listen to the Ruthless podcast. It's brutal and funny today. Go to anywhere where iTunes are. Ruthless Podcast. Download it. Like and subscribe if you wish to opine. Happy to welcome back Ty Lassiter. Ty is the head of Key City Capital. They're a sponsor of my show. I have 4 disclosures to make to you. Number 1, I'm an investor in Key City Capital. Number 2, you can't be in the fund that I invested in. It's closed. Number 3, if you choose to invest with Key City Capital, you read the prospectus, please. And 4, you got to be a qualified investor. Minimum investment, $100,000. But I like to talk to Ty because I like to talk real estate, and people love to listen about real estate. Ty, I'm looking at a report from Yield Pro that tells me the vacancy rate is plummeting and that the number of apartments under construction this year is expected to be half of that constructed last year, and it's going to be lower in 2026, which I guess is going to create quite the demand on your product.
It is. I actually had this exact conversation with somebody earlier this afternoon. Our phones have been really blowing off the hook with what's gone on in the marketplace the last couple of days. People are kind of taking advantage of the stock market climb and taking some chips off the table. But I was talking to an individual, and just in Dallas alone, 2 years ago, there was 118,000 units that hit the marketplace. Last year, there was 55,000. This year, there's going to be 18,000 that hit the marketplace.
Wow.
And that's rampant across the United States. And we're talking in Dallas here, where that is not even keeping up with the monthly inflation of the population. And so we're going to have a real issue on our hands. And this is something that Trump is definitely attacking right now. People are seeing the stock market being a little bit speculative, and it's a time that it's time to take some chips off the table there in the market and go into a physical asset backed opportunity, a physical asset backed investment like real estate, because what Trump is focusing on is correcting the real estate market, making it affordable to be in a household again. And so we're not seeing that right now. So he's wanting to push building, he's wanting to push supply there. And right now is the time to take advantage of it while demand is far exceeding supply. So we're seeing some huge opportunities in front of us right now.
People who are interested in this, by the way, can go to keycitycapital.com/Hugh to request the prospectus. keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Ty, why has construction plummeted? Do people not want to borrow the money at the higher interest rates? I know that's why you get limited partners investing with Key City Capital, so you can buy it all with cash. But that's why the construction boom is halted?
Yeah, so we saw it coming out of COVID, and it was more because of the supply cost. Now we're seeing a little bit of effects from tariffs, not so much in the construction industry. The majority of it is, as you say, the interest rates, and interest rates are just out of control right now, which is just like you mentioned, created the opportunity that we have. We're going in with our newest fund right now and buying all cash. And so it's a limited fund offering. We're going to have a very short window to really take advantage of this. It's an opportunity where we can go in, we can buy these assets right now without putting bank debt in front of our fund dollars. So we own all cash, which is going to generate anywhere from 3 to 6% cash flow across the fund while we set on these assets and let the assets grow in value so that we can capitalize on the appreciation on the back end when we sell. And all of this is a highly tax advantaged investment. We want to make sure that our investors are getting the advantages that come with investing in real estate. And so that's why we structure our deals the way that they do.
So Ty, would you explain for first-time listeners, we got new stations, for example, in Jacksonville, Florida, what a limited partner in a Key City Capital investment gets?
Yeah, I'll really quickly, what we get is when an investor comes in, they get a stated preferred rate of return of 8%. And that scales up depending on how much you invest, but starting at 8%. So what that means is when you invest $100,000, we owe you your money back plus 8% per year before I start making any money. Now, I am an investor as well in all of our funds, and my money operates just like everyone else's. But when you put your $100,000 in, we owe you 8%. We owe you 8% per year. If the property only produces 6% that year, the additional 2% rolls to the next year, and so on and so forth. And then when we go to sell the assets and we really take advantage of that appreciation, the investors get 80%, and then we get 20% of whatever is left over after the investors get their money back, and they're 8% per year, plus 80% to them, 20% to us. And so what we're targeting is the mid-teen rates of annualized rate of return. We're looking to hit about 15, 16% rate of return on your money. And it's tax advantaged. So you're not seeing that reduced by any tax offset or anything. It's a straight 15 to 16%. So the equivalent of that in the marketplace is going to be a 22 to 24%, depending on whatever tax bracket that you're in.
I like to tell people your target investor, doctors, lawyers, independent professionals, people who would like to have some real estate exposure in their portfolio, but not be too heavily invested and be a limited partner so they're not getting called in the middle of the night as an owner of a rental property. And is that like the number? Am I target over the target there, Ty?
That's exactly right. And it's just like Hugh, it's just like yourself. You know, you enjoy the benefits of owning real estate. You want the benefits of owning real estate, but you don't want to deal with the tenant issues in the middle of the night. That comes to us. We handle all of that. When a tenant, if and when a tenant falls off of a stair and wants to sue somebody because they want to find a quick, easy way out, that goes through me. That does not go to you. That is all dealt with by us. So you're completely limited. You're completely sheltered from all of those type things. You sit back and you're a passive investor, and you get to take a look in your mailbox and see what your investment has grown by and whatever the cash flow is for that quarter.
Head to keycitycapital.com/Hugh, keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Thank you, Ty. Let me remind everyone, I'm in the Relief Factor studio for the last 2 days before we tear it apart, and it will look different in June, Studio North. But I brought my Relief Factor with me, and I take it with me wherever I go because I'm out and about on the roads tomorrow morning, and Saturday is the long haul. And I take my 4 supplements every day on the air if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. And I'll tell you right now, it's that easy, and it's why I feel that good despite being in the chair for hours today doing exams and hours yesterday doing exams, getting my miles in and moving stuff, because that's what this Expedition North is all about, is moving stuff out of the studio so that Team Dwayne can arrive along with Team Fox and make it look different, better, their view of the world. And I am very happy that they are doing that, but it does require some lifting and some different things. So call if you want to get the benefits of Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or visit relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com. President Trump in Doha, UAE today at a business roundtable, who said this, cut number 10.
I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the media. The media, I have to say, has been very fair. They've been very fair. They've been terrific, actually. I was watching some of our, normally they would not say good things, but they're having a hard time saying bad because this is a record tour. There's never been a tour that will raise, it could be a total of $3.5, $4 trillion. This just in this 4 or 5 days. And it's from great people. And our relationship now is very strong with Saudi Arabia. Nobody's going to be bothering that relationship. Nobody would be able to break that relationship because of my relationship with the Crown Prince and the family. The relationship is really strong. And when you talk about Qatar, the relationship is equal. I mean, it's just like nobody's going to break that relationship. We have never had a relationship with Qatar as strong as it is now. You know that better than anybody, and they're very happy, and we're going to protect you. We're going to protect you. That's the one thing you need, maybe, but I don't think you're going to need too much of that. And I said last night, it was a great meeting, great everything. They brought in Lee Greenwood to sing. It was a beautiful evening, and I appreciate it.
And then there was this on the Doha Business Roundtable, cut 12.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Your Highness. What a lot of people don't know, I think my staff is very surprised by it. You and I have been friends for a long time. We've been good friends. And what they don't know about you is that you are considered a truly great warrior. And you've been through the wars. You're a great warrior, a very strong man, a brilliant man, a man of vision like few others, and highly respected. When they know you, there's tremendous respect, and you're so respected in the Middle East. It's really amazing. You know, we've done the tour with 2 of your very good friends, you know that. And we were talking about you, and I won't tell you everything they said, but I can say it was all good. It was all good. Total admiration and respect for what you've done and who you are. And they said, When he gives you a handshake, when he makes a deal, that's the deal. And your wonderful brother came to Washington a few weeks ago, and he told us about your generous statement as to the 1.4 trillion. And all I could say is thank you very much. We will work very hard to deserve it. I have absolutely no doubt that the relationship will only get bigger and better. Your relationship and mine can't get better, so I can't say it's going to get better because it's at the highest level it can be. But our countries will work together. We've become a very hot country. We were not such a hot country 6 months ago. And now I think we're the hottest country, if you want to know the truth. We had one little indication a year ago. We were having a hard time getting people to join the military.
We love the fact he's getting along with everyone. President Trump is in Little Sparta, UAE, this hour. He'll be returning home tomorrow. Meanwhile, politics goes on in the nation's capital as we move towards one big, beautiful bill. John Kennedy, though, paused, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana last night, to be on Fox News to talk about what I talked about with President Trump last week on this program, AOC, cut number 14.
Well, I think most Americans understand what's going on with the Democratic Party. They're on their back foot, and they're trying to their leader is Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, and she years ago she took a sharp left, and kept driving, and she's moving their party to the left, and she's losing the American people, and the president keeps hitting them with one blow after another.
See, that's it. That's it succinctly. She is the leader of the party. Chuck Schumer, who is not the leader of the party, he's the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, says things like this, cut number 15.
Donald Trump hates offshore wind. He hates offshore wind because supposedly years ago they built a wind farm off the coast of his Scotland golf course. He fought to kill it, he lost. So now he's taking it out on all offshore wind to the detriment of the American energy needs. In a way that is like a dictatorship.
All right. Now, you wonder why Democrats are losing their mind. That's their Senate leader. He's talking about offshore wind, which, to my knowledge, no one has ever spontaneously brought up to me. And he's talking about how it makes Donald Trump a dictator. That's nuts. Chuck Schumer's best days are behind him. Time for AOC to take over the party. And I do mean that, time to take over the party. Time for me to remind you of a couple of our sponsors, one of which is BestHotGrill.com. I want to run, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, the video of our friends at BestHotGrill.com, because dads and grads time, and you don't want to be late for Father's Day. You don't want to be late for the graduation. If you're 50 or older, this is all you like to do is you sit down and you get yourself a big old honkin' steak and you grill it 3,000 degrees in a minute or less. And if you're a youngster, you want a hibachi. They have all size. They have all shapes. They're all made in America. They're BestHotGrill.com, the gifts of good grilling and healthy eating. What makes you a wonderful, happy gift recipient. Try it before you buy it. BestHotGrill.com has been a sponsor for many years. Rhett and Irene are friends of ours. They're all made in America. They're wonderfully serviced. They're wonderfully installed. As again, I say, try it before you buy it. It is amazing. The Solaire infrared grills, grads and dads and grandpas. Don't forget grandpas. BestHotGrill.com. I also want to tell you about a second sponsor, because I made the switch to Consumer Cellular. My second line is Consumer Cellular now. And you can do that in less than 2 minutes. It takes less than a half a minute to find a real person. One button. Hello, it's Consumer Cellular. Are you calling from blank, blank, blank? And you hit one button and you're one of their service centers, which are in America. And they'll make the switch. Now, if you need unlimited data, the offer they're making right now, 2 lines, $60 a month. Second month free if you use my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H. Or you can call them at 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. Use my name, Hugh, and you'll get those 2 lines, unlimited data, $60 a month. But if you don't use all that much data, they have low data plans. They got 5 gig plans and 10 gig plans. Their target demo is 50 years and older, people who want to have savings without sacrifice, people who want coast-to-coast, clear quality, absolute precision, wonderful reception, the whole 9 yards. That's consumercellular.com. Don't pay more than you have to. Save yourself hundreds of dollars a year, potentially, by making the switch. You can keep your old number if you want to get a new number. Keep your old contacts if you want, or say, I've had it with those people. I'm starting over. Or get a second phone for emergencies like I did. Whatever it is, consumercellular.com/Hugh, or call 1-800-411-4494. Now I want to go back to the president on this trip. By the way, Democrats are admitting. James Himes, Democrat, Connecticut, at a Politico gathering about this trip, cut number 16.
I'm not in the habit of praising Donald Trump, but I got to tell you, the last week or so in the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia is a different story. Yeah. The last week in the Middle East, I go into the week fearing that the Prime Minister of Israel is hell-bent on going to war with Iran. I go into the week worried that we're going to miss the thread of an opportunity in Syria for the new leadership there. And I got to tell you, I think the president has, in this last week or so, played the Middle East pretty darn well. My guess is that the Prime Minister of Israel is cooling his heels a little bit on planning for Iran. My guess is that he's probably thinking through a better situation than he otherwise might want for Gaza. And look, it appears we're going to give Shara a chance in Syria. That's pretty good stuff. Again, not in the habit of praising this president, but I got to give him some.
I am not in a habit of praising Shara. And I said so on Special Report last night. I know MBS wanted it done, and they got together. We'll see if he takes over the ISIS prison camps. We'll see if he joins the Abraham Accords, in which case I'll say, okay, my reluctance was misplaced. Donald Trump knew what he was doing, and he fooled me again. Now I want to talk about, at the Doha Business Roundtable, they talked about the Air Force of the future in the Middle East, cut number 13.
One of the things for the people that are interested in the military that I asked to look into, the F-35, we're doing an upgrade, a simple upgrade, but we're also doing an F-55. I'm going to call it an F-55, and that's going to be a substantial upgrade, but it's going to be also with 2 engines, because the F-35 has a single engine. I don't like single engines. Even this man, he's the best in the world at engines, but on occasion, I know you won't admit this, if an engine goes out, it's nice to have 2, 3, or 4. That's why I like the 747. It's got 4. And but today they're getting very big, and it's a little more cost-saving to have 2 very, very big ones. But no matter how good, they tell me, Larry, the engine will never go out. Well, I think it goes out on occasion, very rarely. And we're going to do an F-55, and I think if we get the right price, we have to get the right price. And that'll be 2 engines and a super upgrade on the F-35. And then we're going to do the F-22. I think the most beautiful fighter jet in the world is the F-22, but we're going to do an F-22 Super, and it'll be a very modern version of the F-22 fighter jet.
This is great news, but the F-22 is the dominant airplane platform. Even those who fly F-18 Super Hornets, they will admit the F-22 superior airplane. F-35 pilots will admit F-22 superior airplane. Glad to hear we're bringing it back. Amen. That's a great bit of news. Let me also tell you about our friends at andrewandtodd.com. The markets have closed. I'm not going to do the market update till later in the program. But the 10-year Treasury, I was talking with the home builders last week from Key City Capital, last hour from keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Well, those of you who don't want to invest in real estate, you just want to buy a house, you don't go to Key City Capital, you go to andrewandtodd.com, 2 D's and Todd, andrewandtodd.com. They lend you the money on your house. You can call them at 888-888-1172. If you have to move, if you got the notice today, if you're in the military, you got to move. I've had 2 kids in the military, and they get sent around, sometimes suddenly, sometimes not so suddenly, sometimes on a schedule, sometimes unscheduled. They got to get up, they got to get moved. Sometimes they rent out, sometimes they buy out. If that's you, or you're working for a big corporate place and they want you to move you from East Coast to West Coast or North to South, andrewandtodd.com, because they work with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are a bank. 888-888-1172. Soup to nuts. They open the file, they underwrite the file, they study your credit, they'll prepare your credit, they give you a line of a pre-qualification letter, they give you an approved loan so that you walk in the door, you're not working against everybody else. andrewandtodd.com. 888-888-1172. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put anything down, perfect. If you're FHA, you want the first-time home buyer package, perfect. Senior citizen, living in your own home, and you want a reverse mortgage, perfect. andrewandtodd.com. I've known Andrew for 20 plus years. We meet most Wednesdays in a small group for Bible study purposes. They are wonderful human beings. I've only known Andrew half the time, but they are wonderful human beings. 888-888-1172. Also want to remind you, take a look around at the old Studio North. Oh, am I out of time? I'll tell you about Relief Factor next segment then, because it's the last time I'll be in this studio today and tomorrow, and tearing it all down, redoing it. That's just what we do to keep pace with the changing world. Markets have closed. Let me update them for you. Brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. Nick Grovich does one thing, buys and sells precious metals. I mean, he does have the Coin Collectors Guild over here in the corner, but mostly he's dealing with people like me. I bought my gold from Nick in January. I do it every year. It's called dollar cost averaging. I don't know what the price is going to be. I do it at the same time every year. This year I did it with Nick, and I love the fact it was so smooth, so easy to do, so complete, because it's transparent. Market today, the update. Dow's up 0.65%, S&P up 0.41%, NASDAQ off a shade, down minus 0.18 after a couple of days of robust growth. Gold, however, went up today, 1.5%, 1.57% specifically, up to $3,238 an ounce. So if you bought on the dip yesterday, good on you. But I really don't believe in buying on the dip with a commodity. I think that's a really short-sighted thing. If you want to trade gold stocks, I suppose you can do that. But if you're actually trading bullion, that's out there. I'm also not a big believer in Bitcoin. I know it's all the rage among the youngs, but that's fine. I'm not going to do that. I don't understand it. I only buy what I understand. I understand gold. Gold's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's always been a reserve currency, more than kept pace with the pace of inflation for the past 100 years. You're going to buy gold today. Do it from Nick Grovich and his team. 1-800-221-7694. The number is on the screen there. 1-800-221-7694 if you're watching the Salem News Channel. 1-800-221-7694. Tell Nick Hugh sent you. I want to go back to the clips from the president's trip. He also said this at the airbase in Qatar today, cut number 5.
My trip is 4.5 days, but this is the one I was so looking forward because I'm with the people that I really love and respect. And we love and respect you. This is what you're doing, the service you do for your country. You keep us safe. There is no more important profession. And I was so proud to see those reports coming in just a few days ago saying that the enrollment is at the highest level ever, especially when I had to suffer running against a group of people that were very inappropriate, where they allowed that reputation of what you stood for and what you stand for to deteriorate to a point where we weren't able to recruit. So just remember this, you have a job now that everybody wants. Everybody wants to be doing what you're doing. It's a special job, and I'm so proud. When I saw those numbers come across the board that we set the record for enrollment in the military, and we took that from the exact opposite just 6 months before. I was very, very proud of that. We have a great country. We have a proud country. We have a country that's respected all over the world. And as I said before, a year ago we were laughed at, but nobody's laughing at our country anymore. We're the most respected country anywhere in the world. And thank you very much, and enjoy your lives, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love that he's meeting with the troops. The troops gave him a rousing welcome. They love him. I would guess the enlisted military is 75, 80% Trump, if not higher. Donald Trump sat down on Air Force One last night as he jetted around with Sean Hannity. Let's play a couple of cuts of that. Cut number 7, where Sean asked him about Pope Leo XIV.
Last question. We have our first American Pope. He does seem to disagree with you on immigration. Putting that aside, would you like to talk to him about that?
Sure. I mean, I would. He was really a surprise choice. And I noticed on CNN yesterday, Dana Bash was saying, well, this had nothing to do with Donald Trump. And
it didn't. The Catholic Church is much bigger than America. It's much older than America. People who think it had something to do with Donald Trump, I just think they're clueless. He had a longer conversation with Sean about Democrats on Air Force One. Cut number 8, Donald Trump, Sean Hannity.
What's really fascinating is you take up a lot of space in their head. And it's funny, you said, how could they possibly vote against lower prescription drug costs? But in the U.S. Senate, the Democrats were championing the right of men to play women's sports. They've been the party of fighting for the rights of illegals, even Tren de Aragua, Abrego Garcia, etc. They're the party that thinks it's a constitutional crisis, that you and Doge have had, nearly $200 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. They think that's a constitutional crisis. So you're asking, how could they be that extreme? Aren't they that extreme?
well, not all of them. I think you have a lot of them that they don't know where they are right now. I think they don't know what to do, like men playing in women's sports. I saw a guy that I know, a good guy, Democrat. He's trying to justify, 2 days ago on television, he's being hammered, and he's trying to justify men playing in women's sports, and it's sad. I wanted to call him and say, you better get off that subject. That's not an 80-20, that's about a 97-3, okay? If they talk about, the famous...
I've gone from 80-20 to 90-10, and when he said that's not 80-20, that's 97-3, I think he might be right. I was at the Minnesota Family Council's annual banquet, and Becca from True North Legal was talking about this, and she calls it a Genesis issue. And it is a Genesis issue. They're only men and women, and some children have gender dysphoria, and they transition. And I understand that, and I have compassion for their family. I'm not going to make fun of people like that. I'm going to pray for them and hope they come out of it on the other side of adolescence or adulthood, or they learn how to deal with it and cope with it in their life. But in the meantime, girls need their spaces and their sports. Women have earned their spaces and their sports. Title IX's 50 years old. It was not written. No one thought it applied to transitioning youngsters or adults. Nobody, zero. So let's get that squared away at the Supreme Court and stop this nonsense. They should not be playing, much less changing in the spaces reserved for the other sex. Now let me tell you about Relief Factor. I ran out of time last segment. Today was one of those days. Got up, had a couple of cups of coffee, and then sat down and hammered on exams. Went through exam after exam after exam. I take a long time, and I make sure that the students who have put in a lot of time over the course of a semester. Law school is different. The way I do it's the old school. One exam at the end of the semester. So I taught 2 classes a semester, Common Law and First and 14th Amendment. And at the end of that, I always set it up that the people who are very suave and learn easily, they don't like to memorize. So I make them memorize, and that's pretty easy to grade. It's just 33 questions. They got to know the answer. They don't know the answer. Holdings or case names. And then I go on to the racehorse hypotheticals, which are very hard to grade because they're very hard to do, and they really separate the well-prepared and the so-so prepared and the, well, maybe I didn't do so much work here. And at the end, I'm confident in my grades. But it takes a long time in one position. You want to do as many of them at a time so that you are consistent across the grading. So you sit there, and sure enough, your back goes out, but Relief Factor kicks in, I'm fine. 3 hours later, I'm fine. Call 1-800-4RELIEF if you want to order a 3-week starter pack, $19.95, or go to their website and say, I want that starter pack at relieffactor.com. That's less than $1 a day. relieffactor.com. It will change your life. You'll feel better about it. Don't go anywhere except, don't accept any substitutes either. Don't spend all day at GNC trying to find this stuff. Just order relieffactor.com. Donald Trump was with Sean Hannity on Air Force One last night. I want to close with the last clip of that. Cut number 9, where the current president's talking about the former president.
And if you look at this poor soul, this lost soul from the last presidency, and I say that because he was a very mean person. They went after our people, including me, but he was a very mean person. He was not a smart person. In fact, if you go back 30 years ago, he wasn't a smart person. You go back to prime time with him, he wasn't a smart person. But he was a very mean person. Joe Biden's a very mean person. People don't understand that. They've ruined lives. They've ruined families. They've ruined so many people.
And he's talking about, of course, the lawfare that was waged against him that the president could have stopped, the former president. I do believe he recognizes that the last 2 years of Joe Biden wasn't Joe Biden. It was whoever was running Joe Biden. And as I said earlier to John Ashbrook of the Ruthless podcast, I think maybe Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in the Washington field office and maybe James Comer in House Oversight, they need to talk to Biden Inc. people, those who are competent. I don't think the former president's competent. But Dr. Jill, Hunter, Jim Biden, his brother, the kids, everyone involved in everything, under oath, because they've been pardoned for whatever they've done, including violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. But they can be asked questions under oath, and they have to answer those questions under oath, and they ought to be made to, because I really would like to know who is running. I'd call in Secretary Blinken, National Security Advisor Sullivan. This was a constitutional crisis, a real one. We didn't know it. The president was incapacitated large parts of the time, if not wholly, for at least the last 6 months. He was infirm for 2.5 years. I said so again and again and again. So we really ought to ask people, who is in on the cover-up? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you do the 25th Amendment? By the way, Kamala Harris ought to be called in and asked about this. That was a real, what we saw, the world saw. And the world saw a lot more of it because they got listening devices everywhere. They got spies everywhere. That's what the world does. They know how badly he was incapacitated. They knew, why do you think Putin went into Ukraine? Because Joe Biden's weak. Why do you think the Taliban rushed Kabul? Joe Biden had no plan, made up an exit date, just an old man throwing darts. And we'll all end up there if we don't exit quickly. And the sad part is, he was president of the United States, and that's not what he deserved. He deserved to sit on the beach, but now the family business is blown, and the question is, do they have any money? Do they have the money that they need to keep up the lifestyle to which they have become accustomed? Speaking of keeping up business, Scott Bessent has impressed everyone as Secretary of the Treasury. He was also at the Doha Business Roundtable yesterday. He had this to say, cut number 11.
It was a very important step in establishing a working relationship below the two heads of state. So with the tariff program, we had a plan, we have a process, and now we have a mechanism with our Chinese counterparts to prevent an escalation again. We're going to go into a series of negotiations. They're going to be fulsome, and we have a lot to talk about, but I think over the next 90 days we can accomplish a lot.
Markets are optimistic. Again, NASDAQ did not go up today, but the other markets did. I think the world is very optimistic about all of this. I want to go back to what I said about the trip last night on Hannity. Not on Hannity, special report. Brett Baer is in Doha, or was last night. They're moving on. Britt Hume, Susan Page, and I were on the panel. This is my one bite at the apple last night, cut 3.
Yeah, Hugh, another big deal also happened this morning in Saudi Arabia before they came here to Qatar, and that is this meeting with the Syrian president. Caroline Levitt put out a post about it and a picture summarizing that meeting, saying that President Trump wants the President al-Shara, to sign on to the Abraham Accords with Israel, tell all foreign terrorists to leave Syria, deport Palestinian terrorists, help the United States prevent a resurgence of ISIS, and assume responsibility for ISIS detention centers in northeast Syria. He said that the Syrian president is on board, wants to get into the fold, and it's being applauded by other leaders in this region.
Well, Brett, I'm a little skeptical of that. In fact, I'm a lot skeptical of that. The ruler of Damascus, we won't say Syria because the Kurds control the western part of the country, and Israel has established a security zone for the Druze, just adjacent to the Golan Heights. So he's got his own part. He's really a proxy for Turkey. I suppose we can put the sanctions back on if he doesn't deliver, but I'd rather he had delivered before the sanctions came off. I will say, though, on whole, that's the only thing I've seen go wrong on this trip, or at least give me any kind of heartburn on this trip. Last night at the Gulf Cooperation Council, the president, and they were all there around the table, said Iran can't have a nuke and they've got to stop supporting terrorism. Palestinians have to stop raping, murdering, and killing people if they want peace. And he said the hostages must be released before we get to peace, meaning that implies a three-step process, hostages first. That wasn't covered much either, like the speech, but that was a very important moment last night. And I think the high point of the trip for me was the tough talk directly to our Sunni allies. I think it was. I think it was the high point last night. Jake Sherman, 40 minutes ago, texted out, tweeted, actually, posted on X. A House Republican just exited the party meeting about reconciliation and texted me this. We're cooked. Speaker, let this get out of control. Well, I don't take anonymous quotes. I talk to the people who are running the show, like House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Leader Scalise, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh, it's great to be back with you.
Tell me, how went that meeting, and is it dire like Jake Sherman said?
Of course not. Look, the media has counted this bill out for dead at least 10 times. They don't want us to pass President Trump's number one priority, this one big, beautiful bill, but we're going to do it anyway. And look, we had a great meeting. A lot of our members had questions. There were some who said, I don't like that we didn't go far enough here, that we went too far there. That's usually what happens when you have a bill this big. I mean, we're doing 11 committees have a piece of this. We're doing tax reform, making sure nobody in America gets a tax increase, no tax on tips, the other priorities President Trump had, energy production, border security. We're doing work requirements in the food stamp, SNAP program, work requirements in Medicaid, kicking illegals off of so many of these programs that has been needed to be done for years and years, by the way. We're fine doing it. So yeah, it's controversial. And there's some members that don't want to do that, but we're going to get it done because failure is not an option, you.
Now, I talked to August Pfluger earlier today. He's on Energy and Commerce. They set the record 26 hours to get the markup done there. It's all open regular order, which is former Congressman John Campbell said to me yesterday, the marvelous thing is this is being done with regular order and in the open, and the bills are out and people are marking them up. There going to be some frayed tempers. You just take the weekend off and come back and finish on Monday, or you're going to work around the weekend?
Yeah, look, I mean, most of our members are going to go home tomorrow and go back to their districts. Hopefully they're going to hear from their districts that you better deliver on President Trump's agenda, the things that not only President Trump ran on, we all ran on this too. We said we were going to prevent a tax hike. We said we would secure the border, produce more American energy. Let's get our economy back on track. We do all that in this bill, but it's good to have everybody get back home for a few days. The speaker, myself, we're going to be on phone calls and in meetings through the weekend, resolving the final couple of pieces. On any big bill like this, you usually have a handful or less issues that are still unresolved that are going to get worked out. We're going to get them worked out by Monday, and we have to.
Now, Leader Scalise, you got the closer. The closer's in the Middle East, and he's coming up. Do you need him yet, or is the closer going to be needed when the Senate and the House are together?
Look, the closer has helped us every step of the way. When we had two different votes on the budget, which is the first half of reconciliation, we were 5 votes short on the day of the budget vote. President Trump directly called those members. He said, give me names. He called all 5 of them, got them to yes. That got us when we had a 2-vote margin. We could only lose 1 vote. We lost 1 vote. We didn't lose any more than that because President Trump closed those votes for us. And he wants to help every step of the way. Yes, he's out of the country now. He'll come back tomorrow. You don't want to be the guy that kills President Trump's bill, his signature achievement. And so we're going to get this done. We're going to keep working through the weekend, come back Monday, bring it through the Rules Committee Monday and Tuesday, bring it on the floor Wednesday, and then let the Senate start working on it.
Now, you're a great leader, so you won't tell me any names, but the reporting is there are two problems. One are our budget hawks, and one are our salt caucus. What do the budget hawks want that they haven't got yet?
And I was in a meeting a little while ago for over an hour and a half with both groups at the same time.
Oh.
And, you know, what the SALT folks want is more relief on SALT than what was in the Ways and Means Committee markup. We're talking about that. But what the fiscal hawks, and put me in that group, by the way, we'd like to see more done on Medicaid. You know, this program is mushroomed and ballooned to where it almost doubles in cost every 6 years. That's not sustainable, And so we're putting work requirements in place, which is really good. But look, there's another thing we want to fix. Is it fair that right now somebody who's able-bodied and healthy and making over the poverty level is getting 90% Medicaid reimbursement and a disabled person's only getting 65%? Why is that disparity there? That's not fair when this program was created for the truly needy, disabled, pregnant moms. Why don't we make the program work better for those who are needy, but try to scale it back for those folks who can go get a job? And I think most Americans support that. And we make the integrity of the program work better for the people who deserve it.
Leader, my audience is tired of me telling them this, but for 17 years I was on a commission in California that did a lot of Medicaid work. You know, it's terrible insurance. Poor people aren't really helped by it. The whole
Right.
system needs an overhaul. And you and I can remember when Moynihan ran the Social Security thing with Reagan. Can we ever get a bipartisan group to go to work on Medicaid and make it work?
Well, I wish we could. Right now, every Democrat is against anything President Trump does just because they hate President Trump. And by the way, the public is fed up with that. That's why the Democrat Party is in disarray. They don't have an agenda. They're just against Trump. But we're working it through budget reconciliation on making some of these reforms. I'd like us to give governors more flexibility. You know, the needs of California low-income people are very different than the needs of Louisiana low-income people, yet it's a one-size-fits-all product. And by the way, it's bad for both states. Why don't we give more flexibility? Why don't we address that 90% reimbursement for the expansion population? When Obamacare expanded and then COVID comes along, Biden expanded it even more. They took people out of private insurance, which we should want more people to be in private insurance. They took them out of private insurance and put them into Medicaid at 90% match. Why don't we fix that problem and get more people into private insurance? The work requirements, by the way, will start that process.
Last question. The last thing I heard is that the SALT cap was up to 30 grand, which is a lot to me. It seems a lot to me. I left California because of their ridiculous taxes, but I'll live with anything that gets it over the line. Is that going to go up a little bit more?
We're working with them, and look, it's really the total cost more than what the exact cap is. I mean, clearly different pieces of the cap, where it starts, is there a cap on people over 400,000? All of those things we're in negotiation over. But at the end of the day, what's going to be the total cost and where do you pay for it? You know, the money doesn't fall out of the sky, and they recognize that too. We've got to figure out how to pay for each one of these reforms. And so we're going to get there. It's just taking a lot more time, but we've got a deadline of Monday to go to Rules Committee. So let's go get it done. We're going to work through the weekend.
Leader Scalise, always good to talk to you. Always upbeat, always working, and I appreciate it. The guy from the SEC I actually like are Johnson and Scalise. They're the only two. The only two I trust from the SEC, at least from LSU land. Thank you, Leader Scalise. I am very glad to hear from Steve Scalise. The majority leader and the speaker are the traffic cops here. Tom Emmer's in there, too. And so when he tells me it's going to go to Rules on Monday, it's going to pass, and it's going to go to the Senate, I believe him. Steve Scalise, at least the equal of anyone when it comes to trustworthiness in the Congress. Steve Scalise says it's going to Rules on Monday and it's going to pass. It's going to go to the floor. It's going to pass. It's going to go to the Senate. I believe him. And so anonymous people texting our friend Jake Sherman at Punchbowl, great. Hey, get some clicks. That doesn't mean it's true. I'm sure there are disagreements. I'm sure they're going to have lots of meetings all weekend long. Most of the members are going to go home. Their jobs are done. They got it out of Ways and Means. They got it out of Ag. They got it out of Energy and Commerce. They're getting closer and closer and closer, and they're making the sausage, and I don't want to watch. Not my job. My job is to send you to taxcutsnow.com, the project of the Job Creators Network. They're great sponsors of this show and of you. because they want your taxes to stay low and get lower. They want the no tax on tips for working people. They want no tax on Social Security for people who are less well off than those who don't need that. They want the extension and the making permanent of the tax code. They want it all. And they also want $150 billion for a defense pop. They also want to build the beautiful wall. They want it all. They're going to get it all in one big, beautiful bill. And the closer's coming home. So he's been over, they're arguing over tens of billions, and he's over bringing back $4 trillion from this shake and that shake and this company and that sovereign wealth fund, and everybody's happy. And they're all buying American defense products, which is great. But you need to do your part. Go to taxcutsnow.com. Tax singular, cuts plural, now.com. Taxcutsnow.com. And pay no attention to the man behind the curtain who's telling you it's all in disarray and people are mad at each other. I'm sure they're tired. 26-hour Energy and Commerce Committee meeting, that's not my idea of fun. Not in the least. I mean, I don't want to go to Richie's, the sinful monkey in Mobland, but I do know that you should go to taxcutsnow.com because they'll connect you up with your member, and you can tell them, hey, I don't know if you're Freedom Caucus or Blue State Caucus. I don't know if you're a SALT tax guy or you want Medicaid cuts or you want more defense. Whatever you are, just get this done. Come back. You get a second bite at the apple, a second reconciliation next year. You can do some more cuts. You can do more tax cuts. You can do some more spending cuts. You can do that all next year. Right now, tax cuts now, as in next week in the Rules Committee. Coming right back, America. I'm going to take a break and talk with Shalom Laham, Chief Operating Officer of Operation Benjamin, which I did not know about. Then Seth Mandel, and we review the president's trip to the Middle East. Joined by a recommended guest by our friend Bethany Mandel. Not many people do I listen to, but I always listen to Bethany. And she said, you got to talk to Shalom Laham because of Operation Benjamin. Shalom, welcome. It is great to have you. I didn't know a thing about Operation Benjamin until Bethany told me, and I went and looked it up. Godspeed on your work. Would you tell people about it and you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Operation Benjamin is a unique organization. Most people don't know that hundreds of USGIs who fought in World War I and World War II were mistakenly buried under crosses in America's foreign cemeteries. These were accidents. They weren't done on purpose. This wasn't malicious, but it did occur. And it occurred hundreds of times. So what we do is we say to ourselves, here are young men who gave up their lives in the service of our country, who gave all of their tomorrows away for our lives. And what they did when they were killed is they lost the ability to fight for their own identity. And when they were misburied, we've taken it upon ourselves to go there and work with the American Battle Monuments Commission, with the families of these soldiers. And there's a very high bar because you're doing something for eternity. But we work on replacing those headstones from Latin crosses to Stars of David. And we do these very beautiful and very meaningful ceremonies. I'm actually speaking to you from Rome, Italy, where we just did 3 headstone replacements in the last 2 days. And it's the honor of a lifetime.
Well, I think it's an amazing thing. It has not been done before, and I compliment you on this. I've been to the American Cemetery outside of Florence. I've been to the American Cemetery at Normandy a few times, and the headstones frequently feature the Star of David. I don't want to throw any blame on anyone, cast any shade. How did the screw-ups happen?
They're actually really quite innocent. And, there are, of course, many, many, many different reasons, but I think a common theme would be the following, and I think you'll find it interesting. Many soldiers said, you know what, I don't want to have an H for Hebrew on my dog tag. I'd rather have a P or a C, Protestant or Catholic, because if I'm captured, let's say by Nazi Germany, the last thing I want to do is be identified as a Jewish soldier, Jewish American soldier. And so what they would do is either before battle, they would deface their dog tag and just, bang out the H. and say, I don't want to get captured with this identity. Or they would, from ab initio, they would just put a C or a P on their dog tag, thinking, if I get captured, I can make this. They never thought they'd get killed and what the consequences of that were. And so you had this poor guy from Graves registration, soldier gets killed, he's got a P for Protestant on his dog tag. And what's the poor guy to do? He properly does the right thing and buries that soldier under a cross. Most people don't realize soldiers were buried multiple times until their final resting place. So you have this mistake is made and then it's compounded and it's compounded again. And you have this long paper trail of burying a guy under a cross when really he belongs under a Star of David. And
when
so
a family finds out,
no.
Yeah, how does a family find out? Do they go to pay their respects at the graveside? I know people go to Auschwitz and find the book of the lost, but how do people find out their son, and I suppose a few daughters, are buried incorrectly in one of them? They're the most sacred spaces that America has, our cemeteries abroad.
Oh, they're extraordinary. They're the repository of our most wonderful and noble stories. They're hallowed ground. They're shrines to goodness and democracy. I don't mean to sound like an advertisement, but they're just such moving and amazing places. And I do want to say that the superintendents and those staffs who guard those places, those aren't jobs, those are callings. And we deal with amazing people. And even though our focus is Jewish soldiers, we recognize that we're dealing with a field of heroes, a field, cemeteries are usually a place of old people who you mourn over. Well, these are places of youth. These are places of sacrifice, and they're really amazing hallowed ground. And I recommend that young people really need to visit these places more than any other to see that democracy is not free. It's cost a great deal. There's such sacrifice. So that's what we do. That's where we go.
How did you get called to this? You're a historian. How did you end up doing this work?
So I am a historian, a military historian. I actually didn't find this problem. It was not a problem that I found. I have a very dear friend who ended up being my co-founder, Rabbi Dr. Jacob J. Schachter and Steve Lamar. Rabbi Schachter was running a tour of medieval Jewish history in the Normandy region in 2014. And like any good American, he went to visit the Normandy American Cemetery around in June. And he walked around and he said to himself, wow, this is amazing. This is holy. And then when he came back, he said to me, it was amazing and holy, but I thought there would have been more Stars of David. So just a quick calculation, 2.71% of U.S. casualties were Jews. So knowing that fact, you can do a quick calculation and say, if there are 9,380 soldiers buried in the Normandy American Cemetery, there should be roughly 240 Jews there. Well, I went and literally counted the Stars of David. And as you say, they're prominent because these long rows of crosses, these beautiful, meticulously laid out crosses, the symmetry is broken by the Stars of David. And so they do stand out. Well, you counted them, and there were 149. And the simple question was, where did all the Jews go? And we came up with a bunch of theories. And then we finally figured out, after really a lot of research, that these were errors that were innocently undertaken. They were innocently promulgated by the US government, by the people who tried to do the right thing. And I have to sort of want to reverse it and say, it's a miracle, not that there are, let's say, about 800 or so of these mistakes from World War II. It's a miracle there aren't 2,000. The fact is, America tried really, really hard to get it right. We can be proud of that. But mistakes did creep in, and it's our job to go there now, all these years later, and say, let's get the history of these guys right. Truth really, really matters.
I am familiar with the American Battlefields Monument Commission because I was once asked, do you want a job? And I said, the only job I ever would want would be on the American Battlefields Monuments Commission because it's such a great group of people. Do they work cooperatively with you?
Oh, we have, if one could say you have a love relationship with a federal agency, that's almost an oxymoron. I would say that's the case here. These are people we have an amazing relationship with. I have to say the bar to change a headstone is very, very high, and it ought to be. So in that sense, they give us a hard time, but in a really respectful and excellent manner. We work very, very well together. And, when we started this, I'll be honest with you, my concern was, is it going to be, we're the U.S. government, we never make a mistake, and, that sort of thing. Nothing could have been further from the truth. When they saw the seriousness of our cause, that we had nothing at stake for ourselves, this was truly an act of purity. They really embraced it. And we have a staff of really outstanding genealogists. We are thorough to the nth degree. We never cut a corner. And we all want the same thing, is to remember these guys for who they were in life. We want to honor them in dignity. And when we do these Head Start places, we just did this week with these families, the closure, the wholeness, the gratitude, the patriotism, I cry every time, I'm not ashamed to say.
Well, who supports Operation Benjamin? Is it primarily American Jewry, or do you get support from Jewry, the diaspora, or out of Israel? Who supports you?
Mostly American Jewry. These are, and in fact, as probably would not be surprising, people who had grandparents, uncles who fought in the war, many who were killed in the war. Those are the people who primarily support us. We do not take money ever from the families of the fallen. That's a hard rule with us, an ethical rule. So it's really the goodness of people. I will tell you, I'm not here alone. I'm here with 68 people who traveled from the United States who did not know these soldiers, who never heard of them until a few months ago, and are here just to say the story is so compelling. We're going to take our time, our treasure. We're going to go with you there and pay homage to these soldiers. It's really a pretty impressive group of people.
The OperationBenjamin.com to learn more about it. I want to know what your area of expertise is other than in righting wrongs. What do you write books about?
So it's, by the way, it's operationbenjamin.org, just a collection.
OperationBenjamin.org. Oh, gosh. OperationBenjamin.org. Sorry.
Yeah. So I've worked on a book, interesting book, about World War I German Jewish fighter pilots, which is a really very, very interesting subject. And what happens there is you say, what did they do to earn that right to be fighter pilots in the German army in World War I? Very interesting time. And then what happened to those families when it came to World War II? Were they protected in any way as a result of their service to the fatherland? And that did not happen. So the research has been completed. The book hasn't been written yet, but the research is completed. So
well, you've got business to do. You've got a higher calling, and I salute you for it. OperationBenjamin.org. OperationBenjamin.org. I want to thank you, Shalom. Thank you for joining me. Come back if you ever need to update and let people know about it. We'll post this over at YouTube so you can send the word around. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere, America. I will be right back. We're going to go from long ago, World War II and World War I. We're going to go to the present war in Gaza with Seth Mandel from the Commentary Podcast. Seth gives me a hard time. His wife gives me great guests, like Shalom La'am. But as you know, I begin every day, or I try to, with the Commentary Podcast, because it is usually late-breaking news and posted as soon as they can. One of the participants, regular, is Seth Mandel, senior writer for Commentary. Seth, I thought you folks were a little overwrought this week, worried about a split between Netanyahu and Trump, which I don't think is there. And I think this speech, though it took a couple of shots at W, was really the resurrection of the Powell Doctrine, sort of revamped and dusted off by Donald Trump. Overwhelming force, limited objective, don't be afraid of it. So all told, I didn't have the reaction you had. How about 48 hours later? What are you thinking about the president's trip?
Well, I think it was less a rift between Netanyahu and Trump and more a rift between Netanyahu and Witkoff, Steve Witkoff, the president's special envoy. That, I think, was really the larger concern, at least for me, because he's the go-between. I don't think that Donald Trump has gotten less supportive of Israel or Israel's needs, but I think that he's listening to Steve Witkoff, and I think Steve Witkoff has been bad-mouthing Bibi to the press and to Israeli hostage families, and I think that's creating a bit of tension there. But in general, his trip has been kind of strange in a way, because he's, Trump has been telling everybody that we're not doing nation building, we're not doing intervention. He calls it interventionalist. We're not doing the interventionist sort of foreign policy, but in a way, he's actually doing it on this trip. So I'm not really sure what the overall objective is, besides this being a kind of investment trip for the U.S. and for U.S. companies and maybe for Trump himself, and in that he goes to the region and says, if Iran doesn't change its behavior, we're going to have to take serious action, and that might mean military action. And Syria, we're going to tell Syria, we want to give you a chance, so we're going to eliminate the sanctions, at least for now, on you, and things like that. So there's intervention as at the root of this trip.
Now, Seth, the thing I thought most significant in all these meetings, when the Gulf Cooperation Council, they're all sitting around a circle, and it's Kuwait, and it's UAE, and it's Saudis, and it's Bahrain, and it's Qatar, and it's whoever else is in the Gulf Cooperation Council. And Donald Trump says three things. One, Iran has to stop terrorism, and they can't have a nuke. Two, the Palestinians, we hope that they do well, but their leaders have got to give up rape, torture, and murder. And three, the hostages have to be let go as a stepping stone to peace. I listened to it like 4 or 5 times because those are three direct messages, and it's sort of like one of those old jokes. I'm right here in the room, and they were all right there, and he's laying out the hardcore stuff. And I thought, I approve of that message. I'm Hugh Hewitt, and I approve of that message, that 3-part message. Do you?
Sure. It's hard not to approve of it. And it's part of the reason that I think there's less of a rift between Netanyahu and Trump himself. I don't think Trump has changed his mind on any of those things. We at the core of this is, what will Donald Trump accept with regard to Iran's nuclear program?
Yes.
And if he's willing to accept something that merely, as recent reports have it, that merely delay Iran's nuclear enrichment, then we're back in a situation closer to we had in the Obama years, where it's kicking the can and can give you some time, but in a way almost legitimizes the eventual pursuit of nuclear power, nuclear weapons. So it really comes
and the
down
skies
to
are
what's the line
naked.
for him.
That right now the skies are naked. They have no air defense, and so I think the Witkoff offer was, well, what Donald Trump said to me on the show last week. They can blow them up nicely with us watching, or we can blow them up viciously. It's an A or a B. But he's talking about the centrifuges and the uranium. He's not talking about a cessation to enrichment. So if that's the deal, it's a bad deal, and the party will split. Let me ask you about this, the dog that didn't bark, Seth. In the middle of all this, after Idan Alexander is released, the Israelis dropped 9 bombs on Mohammed Sinwar, and then they bounced the rubble to make sure he's dead. And the United States doesn't say a word. Can you imagine if Biden, Blinken, and Sullivan had been running things and the Israelis did that?
Yeah, well, we know exactly what they would do and what they would say because we've watched them do it and listened to them say it. And what they say is, at least behind the scenes, this is going to torpedo a hostage deal. This is going to kill our ceasefire negotiations. This is stepping on the American government's toes. We're conducting business here too, and you're getting in the way. The leader of Hamas has to stay alive, or at least the political leader of Hamas has to stay alive long enough to sign the deal, and it just resets every time you keep knocking them out. Things like that. That's what they were saying to the Israelis. And yes, 100%, Trump has been very different on that score and a whole host of others, even truthfully on the aid situation in Gaza, which is where Trump does want the aid to go back in. The Israeli defense establishment is planning to allow aid back in, but Trump is not pushing them to simply open all the gates and let the aid flood Gaza in ways that will fall right into Hamas's hands. So that's another thing that he's not pushing the Israelis to do. He's not pushing them to take, what are arguably suicidal steps, or at least steps that will ensure that they can no longer win the war in that, in the near term anyway.
Now, so Seth, I want to close by, I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet, neither are you. But I expect the president to return to the United States, and if the hostages are not released, for the Gaza offensive to kick off. And by that I mean they've staged everything to crush Hamas and find the hostages if they can. Is that what you expect?
Yes, I don't think that Trump has any plans on holding them back either. That's one area I haven't been so nervous about. The reporting on an Iran deal makes me nervous because I don't know what's going on in his head and what he'll accept. But when it comes to Gaza, I think he's been pretty clear. And there was even reporting today that from a relative of Idan Alexander's that Hamas started feeding him better and letting him drink clean water when Trump was elected because they assumed that meant they would have to return him in due time. And so, yeah, I think Trump talks and they're listening. And I don't think that anybody thinks Trump has been bluffing on Gaza, on letting the Israelis do what needs to be done to finish off Hamas.
All right, last question. Israel, Times of Israel headline. Israel said to be holding talks with Syria on al-Shaara's regime joining Abraham Accords. Last night on Special Report said, this is the only thing I don't like about this trip. He's taking the sanctions off Syria. Was I wrong?
No, it's early to take the sanctions off of Syria, and it also depends on whether there's anything being done in return. You have to remember that there are mass mass graves in Syria. There are, according to a recent New York Times report, possibly 100 sites containing chemical weapons stores. Part of removing the sanctions will have to require full inspections in all those places. We'll have to be able to verify all that stuff first.
Good point. Seth Mandel of Commentary. Follow him, listen to him on the Commentary Pod Monday through Friday. You got to get it up earlier, Seth. Got to get it up earlier. I get it around 10 o'clock. Tell John. Got to get it up earlier. Commentary Pod, Read Commentary Podcast, joined by United States Senator John Husted of the great state of Ohio. Senator, I'm still licking my wounds over the Cavs getting tossed out of the playoffs early. So let's turn to politics. What do you make of reconciliation? This is your first go-around with this. How's it working out?
Look, everybody realizes we need to get this done to prevent a giant tax increase on working families and small businesses. The House is doing its work. It's making progress. I'm hopeful they'll get it passed next week, and then the Senate can do its work, and then we can deliver a big, beautiful bill to America.
Now, are you on any of the committees that have jurisdiction over a portion of the reconciliation bill, Senator?
Yeah, some portions on the Help Committee with healthcare and some with Environment and Public Works. But a lot of that work will be done in the Finance Committee. And I'm not on that.
I talked to Senator Crapo last week, but Medicaid would come to you then. And that's a big sticking point in the House. Do you think you've got the majority of votes on the committee for the Medicaid reforms?
So it depends on what's in them. I think we all are united in the fact that we need to save Medicaid. And to save Medicaid means you have to make it sustainable from a financial point of view. We want to make sure that children, the elderly, people with disabilities have this program available to them, the people who are really in need. But to do that, we're going to have to say to able-bodied, healthy working or healthy Americans that you're going to have to do something in return for these benefits. We need to put a work requirement in there. We need to help create some incentives to deliver these services more cost effectively. Also, as part of thinking about this, remember, we have a nation with a $37 trillion national debt, multi-trillion dollar annual deficits. We're paying $1 trillion on interest on the national debt. So we have to be smart about how we do this. We have to get costs under control. We have to create savings, and we have to deliver the tax portion of the bill. So that's the big, beautiful bill in a highlight. But I think we'll get the Medicaid accomplished.
The bad news is you've got very little seniority. The good news, everybody's vote counts when it's this close. Is there anything that you're dialed in on for the state of Ohio that you really want in the final big, beautiful bill?
Well, I will tell you that anything that helps restore the work ethic to America and fiscal sanity to the nation, I think that helps everybody in Ohio. Ohio is a working class state. It's a state where it's just important that we help small businesses. We help working class families with the tax portion of the bill. But I'm hopeful that in the long run, we'll be able to reform the SNAP program so that we're helping people who are lower income get access to healthier foods. That I hope that we reform the welfare system so that people don't experience this benefit cliff and that they can literally have a pathway to self-sufficiency. Those are some of the finance and policy components of it that I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to advance. I'm working through this new process with the Senate rules about what we're allowed to do, but those things I think are consistent with consistently things that Ohioans care about.
Yeah, every senator has a first year. Mitch McConnell or John Husted. Everyone's got a first year to deal with reconciliation. Welcome to yours. I am wondering, what do you make of President Trump's process through the Middle East? It looks like an almost perfect trip. I'm a little bit skeptical of the deal with Syria, but how do you make of it?
I think it's more than any president has accomplished in the Middle East in quite some time. I mean, he is pursuing peace through prosperity. If you can align nations' economic interests with one another, then you have a chance to do great things. And the idea that America will have a lot of allies, hopefully in the end, in the Middle East, gives us more leverage in that very dangerous part of the world, which I hope will end up leading to a non-nuclear Iran in every sense of the word, that we can dismantle both their weapons and their energy program in the end and make the whole region much safer. And I think he's building the goodwill and the leverage to maybe be able to do that.
I think you're right. Now, in Ohio, we have a lot of friends of Israel, mostly in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, and Columbus, but a lot of friends of Israel, including me and my entire group of friends up in northeastern Ohio. What do you make of the people who are attempting to say this trip is cutting Israel out of the deal? Because I don't see it that way at all.
Israel is America's best ally in the Middle East, and none of this changes that. But I think it's a president who's saying that you just don't have to pick one friend, that you can have multiple friends, and when you can bring your friends together, good things happen. And I think that's what he's trying to accomplish with this.
Now, Senator, you got re-election in 18 months. Very quick question. Do you expect the economy to be going on all cylinders by November of 2026?
I do. I think that we're going to get these trade issues settled that will reestablish our trade relationships with the rest of the world and China in a very fair way. That will lead to a lot of investment in our state, a lot of jobs and prosperity, and we will be, that America First agenda will be leading to prosperity for the people of Ohio and America.
Senator John Husted, good to see you. President Trump will be wrapping up his trip to the Middle East. I want to review it with Jim Talent, former senator from Missouri, chairman of the Leadership Institute at the Reagan Foundation. Jim, what do you make of what we've seen in the last 4 days?
I couldn't be more pleased. I think he's hit a home run. I mean, he accomplished his specific objectives of getting this investment in the United States. That $140 billion that the Saudis are going to put into the defense industry is extremely significant. And remember, when other countries start buying our defense systems, that's a real good reason for them to cooperate with us in the future, because they need the know-how, they need the spare parts, they need the technology. I think he's conferred with the Gulf states on a number of crucial issues. I'm sure he sent a message to Iran through the Qataris. He talked with the Saudis about what's happening in Gaza, probably reassured them there. And of course, the steps he's made in Syria, I think, were very smart. And he's lifted the sanctions, but there's conditions with that. They've got to keep killing ISIS. They can't resupply Hezbollah. They can't militarize the South. And one more thing that's extremely significant. He's using the power of the American narrative to recruit partners, but it's not the way Reagan did with human rights and freedom in the Cold War. What Trump is offering them is opportunity, prosperity, and stability, which is a very effective message in this region, and which counters the Chinese message. The Chinese offer these countries prosperity. They say, we're not going to interfere with your domestic systems. Now, of course, what they really want is market capture and extracting resources. So Trump is saying, you want prosperity, you want opportunity for your people, ally yourself with the most powerful economy in the world. I just think it's been a great trip.
Now, I was on Special Report last night, and I gave it a minus, because I was a little bit concerned over how quickly Donald Trump took the measure of al-Shara and said, strong-looking, good-looking guy, we're going to do some deals with him, we're taking sanctions off. I'd rather have him do a few things first and then reward him, but we rewarded him and hope that he will do a few things first. You're okay with that?
Yeah, I really am, because there's nothing Syria's going to do in the short term. It's not like giving something to the Iranians. I think it's a good faith gesture. It's relief for a country that's been suffering terribly. It gains us friends in the Levant and gains us friends among the Gulf states, and he can always put the sanctions back on. So, and I think he's protecting Israel's interest. I think it's paving the way eventually for normalization between Syria and Saudi Arabia. Once Israel resolves the Gaza war one way or the other, then I think that can go forward. So no, I don't have any problems with it. I mean, we needed to do something with Syria, and as long as this guy's moving in the right direction, and he is, Noah talked about that yesterday or the day before, then I think we can reward him.
Yeah, if he doesn't attack the Kurds, he leaves the Druze alone in the suburbs of Damascus, closer to Israel, and he follows Turkey's lead, it'll be so much better than the genocidal Assad. Now I want to turn to our friends at Commentary and a few other places. They're very upset about this trip, and especially the speech 2 days ago. I viewed the speech 2 days ago as the resurrection, dusting off, and modernization of the Powell Doctrine, which is democracies don't do long wars. We go in with overwhelming force to find objectives, and then we leave. How did you listen to that speech?
Yeah, I think it did. First of all, I'm not worried about Trump being unwilling to take military action. We just spent 9 weeks pounding the hell out of the Houthis. I mean, we destroyed like 3/4 of their missiles, killed a lot of their people. I mean, that was Trump saying, look, I'm willing to use force when you guys push me to it. And as I said, the message that he was sending the Saudis was, look, we respect you. We're not trying to tell you how to run your domestic affairs. But what we're offering you is a future of stability and peace based on mutual prosperity. I think that's exactly the way to recruit them as partners, and we need them. The way to get stability in the Middle East is a foundation based on a coalition with countries that have mutual interest. That's the Gulf states, Egypt, Jordan, and Israel. And
now,
so
you're giving him an
just
A
think
plus,
it was-
Jim, and I can go with that, but I want to ask you what you think happens next in Israel. I think he touches down in the United States, and if the hostages have not been released, Israel turns the IDF loose in Gaza to finish the job. And I base that on repeated statements by the president that what Netanyahu has to do, Netanyahu has to do, and the IDF has to do, the IDF has to do. And they didn't say a word after they blew up Mohammed Sinwar 9 times just to make sure he was dead. Not a word from the United States. If it had been Biden and Blinken, they would have been condemned all the way around. Do you think with me that unless the hostages are out, Gaza is going to be lit?
Well, I think the Israelis are going to do what they said they're going to do, which is to occupy large parts of it, particularly in the north, to expand the buffer and to send the message to Hamas, if you don't release the hostages, you're not going to be in control of your country anymore. And Michael Oren is right. That's something that they care about. Look, the message Trump has sent, he sent it on the campaign trail to the Israelis was, what you're going to do, get done. Remember, he said, do it quickly. I think he's probably sending the same message. If you can't get peace, go in and do what you need to do and get it over with. And when they do, that's when we can proceed with the normalization, the next step in the Abraham Accords. It's difficult for the Saudis to make a lot of gestures towards Israel while this war is going on in Gaza. So I don't think Trump's obstructing them. He's continuing to support them with the weapon systems. He's just saying, look, don't drag this out forever. And he's right. And a lot of your guests, Habib Rediger, has said the same thing, hasn't he? I mean, if we have to do this, let's go do it.
2 headlines. Israel said holding talks with Syria on al-Shaara's regime about joining the Abraham Accords. That's from the Times of Israel. And Trump said to be on brink of making deal with Tehran. Do you really think Tehran will give us the enriched uraniums and blow up the centrifuges?
Well, if they don't, that's when we're all going to criticize the administration. I mean, he's got to make a good deal. He's been very clear what a good deal is. It's breaking down the centrifuges. It's ending and breaking down the weaponization program and breaking down the missile program and proving to us that you've done it. And if he doesn't get that, then my grade on this trip or on his Middle Eastern policy is going to go way down. But I'm willing to give him some running room. I think so far.
I like your summary. Like your summary. From a veteran of such negotiations and a keen-eyed observer of the Middle East, Jim Talent. Thank you, Senator. Follow him on X at Jim Talent. I want to close this show with a sort of a united front on tax cuts. We have two great sponsors who absolutely need your help in pushing these tax cuts over the top. ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org/Hugh. All right, alec.org/Hugh. I do want you to go to ALEC to get richstatespoorstates.org, and they will send that to you free so you can see how taxes impact your own state's livelihood, well-being. Jonathan Williams was on yesterday. He is their lead economist. He's the president of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, brings in legislators from all over the country, and they work hard at developing great policy at the states. Jason Smith, who's the chair of Ways and Means, who got it through Ways and Means, the big, beautiful bill last night. ALEC, raised and taught. ALEC is a wonderful organization. Get richstatespoorstates.org. But also sign up for the State of the States newsletter. You go to alec.org/Hugh and tell them Hugh Hewitt sent you. You want the newsletter. You want Rich States, Poor States. And you get them both at richstatespoorstates.org or alec.org/Hugh. They are working hard on the tax cuts. So are the Job Creators Network. In fact, John Williams with Alfredo Ortiz, and we were together 2.5 weeks ago in Savannah, Georgia, talking tax cuts. Job Creators Network came out of the chute with taxcutsnow.com, taxcutsnow.com. And I love the fact that Alfredo and team have focused in like a laser right at tax cuts, just like Jonathan Williams and team at ALEC and Lisa at ALEC. They are all focused on the one big, beautiful bill, because that's everything. And they're in the last-minute negotiations now between the liberal Republicans from the blue states that want a SALT tax deduction that's higher than 30 grand, and the red state people who want more cuts. They got to get together. The details don't really matter to me. What matters to me is the permanent extension of the Trump tax cuts from 2017 makes all the difference in the world for booming the economy. And I mean booming the economy. Get your voice in there at taxcutsnow.com. Don't forget, I'm in the old Relief Factor Studio North. Next time you see Studio North, it'll all be gussied up, looking different, lots of electronics. I hope. That's the schedule. That's the plan. It depends upon Dwayne. So, you know, we really don't know. But I'm telling you right now, Relief Factor makes it possible for me to hit the roads tomorrow morning and on the weekend. Makes it possible for me to keep up the pace and keep going. Got the exams done today. I told you about it in hour one. And by the time I was done, I could barely move. But I worked it out, and Relief Factor got rid of the minor aches and pains. If you sit in the same chair all day long, you know what it's like. Your back goes. But Relief Factor works. Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Call them. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. If you've got that nagging pain, try it. Go over to their website, too. Look for the starter pack, $19.95. And order up relieffactor.com. Less than $1 a day for 3 weeks. They discount every first pack at relieffactor.com.